Hey, all right. All right, you guys got it right. Hey, things happen, you know. But yes, we are up to Yud Gimel. This is the last section in this chapter. All right, so let's just recap what we had done previously. What we said was that the neshama has a tremendous amount of potential, and because of the sin of Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden, the neshama has become stifled, has become contained within a very physical, heavy, mattered body, and because of that, it's unable to shine, it's unable to express its full grandeur, because it's stuck in the body. Now he said very clearly that this does not mean that the neshama is not accomplishing, does not mean the neshama is not growing, it does not mean that the neshama, all the work that it's doing is for naught. On the contrary, it's all absolutely there, it's all accounted for, and it's all stored within the neshama, and it's once the neshama is released and goes to the world of neshamas that it's able to shine and express itself fully. So that's what we said until now. Okay? We all comfortable with that? Okay. All right, so now Ramchal continues and says as follows. However, you need to know as follows. Kigam ata, even now, when the neshama is put into a body that is going to go away, a body that's not going to last, bodies as we know it, anything of physical matter will decay. So when the neshama is put into our bodies, even though the neshama has not yet been able to achieve perfection through what it's done, because it hasn't done anything yet, right? Before a baby is born, the neshama is put into the body, and at that point is when it starts its journey. And it doesn't even start that until, years down the road where it's able to start actually doing things. So the neshama has not yet acquired any sort of perfection through what it's done. Nevertheless, through its what's a good word for this? Let's see, nobility and radiance. Okay, basically through its inherent greatness, just the nature, the makeup of the neshama is so great that it really should be able to accomplish a tremendous amount of purification to the physical body that it's being put into. To the point that body and soul combination should exceed all of levels of mankind, to the point that that creature would not be able to live together with man, because it would be so great that we wouldn't even call it a man. It would be so magnificent that we would just see this as something entirely different, like an angel practically. That's what really should be, and that's without having done anything. That's without any good deeds. That's simply the value of the neshama. It is so great that it really, by being put into a body, should transform it completely to a point where it is unrecognizable as a human being. Which is how we are to understand Adam. Adam was created, fully formed, and then a neshama was put into him, and he was immediately extremely great. As we said, it says he stretched from the earth to the heavens. It says he was able to see from one end to the other. It says that his feet shone like the sun, even that was afterwards. We're talking about someone who we wouldn't even recognize as a person. His greatness was such that the angels wanted to sing praises to him. They thought that he was a worshipable entity. They thought that Hashem had created a god, so to speak, which is a level that we have a hard time wrapping our heads around. And this is what the angels thought, right? So we're talking about something which is out of this world, and he had not done a single thing right. He hadn't done anything yet. And yet, that was his greatness. His neshama was so powerful that he wouldn't have died. That wasn't decreed yet, because death needed to be decreed, because otherwise he would have lived forever. He was this shine of his neshama was so strong that he didn't have physical temptation. There was no physical urge. There was no physical draw to do anything in life. Because of the neshama. That is the innate power of a neshama. Without any mitzvahs, without any heroics, just the neshama by itself, day one. That is how great it is, and that's where man would be, if not for the sin. Every single person. Yeah.
Why would you use the phrase God to speak?
Because they certainly didn't think that there was another power in addition to Hashem. They clearly know that Hashem is the only power that exists. But they thought that Hashem had created a being that was meant to be worshipped, godlike. Not exactly a god, but a being that was intended to be worshipped by angels themselves. That was the level of greatness. What's up?
When you say that, you mean maybe like a middleman or go-between that Hashem is that much?
Some sort of go-between. I don't know exactly, because the go-between between who and whom?
Between Allah and Hashem.
No, it wasn't. No. The Malachim never thought that he was meant to be a go-between between them and Hashem. They were in closer proximity to Hashem than Adam was. But they did view him as the ruler of the world, the physical world. And he certainly had access to the upper world as well.
So what? So like go-between people.
He was supposed to be the ruler of the physical world. That was his job. And he was the purpose.
Was it not inevitable that he would eventually sin?
Was it not inevitable that he would eventually sin? No, it was absolutely not inevitable. He absolutely could have not sinned. Yeah, definitely. Well, we all do. We all have 50-50. Yeah. Okay. All right, so this is what should be. Amnam, however, the decree of Hashem that came about through the sin of Adam, it covers it. It quashes it. And it hides. It covers over its strength. And it lessens its shine. To the degree that it will not be able to do this anymore. It can't accomplish that anymore. So it's kind of like the Ramchal and Das Tvunos writes that it's like the moon. That the moon was diminished. The moon originally shone like the sun. But the moon was diminished and it now reflects. It's a very small version of what originally was. And yet, in the times of Mashiach, or at least in the future at some point, it will be returned to its full strength. And it will be like another sun. Now, how that's going to work, what that's going to mean, I have no idea. But it's going to be as big as the sun, as bright as the sun. How will there be night? Will there not? I don't know. I don't know how all that's going to work. But the idea is that it's still there. It still has that ability. It's just, right now, it's not in a state that it's able to do that. Okay. So now he continues and says, Avol Teishev Shama Luta Ba'atzma. The neshama sits contained within itself. Ba'aisai Hashir Hamitzarech Lefi HaKavana Ha'alyena. for the amount that it needs to be in order for the purpose and the intention of Hashem's will to be realized. Meaning to say that Hashem wants us to have 50-50 decision making in our lives. He wants our pull to either side to be equal. And in order to accomplish that, the neshama has to be diminished or hidden to the extent that it will be left at a 50-50. Because if it was left a little bit stronger, then it wouldn't be a fair fight. It wouldn't be an even battle, and we wouldn't receive the reward and the growth that we need to do for fulfilling the purpose of our lives. So in order for this to be done, Hashem has to conceal the neshama from us, even, to a point where it's now at 50-50, as the draw between the good and the bad need to be even at all times. Okay. Now, u'pa'elas beguf v'aiseh haseder v'hashir hanirtza mechamase yisbarach shmai. It will accomplish in the body to the extent that Hashem's wisdom sees fit. So Rav Chaim Friedlander, he says that we see there are great sages who look different. When you look at them, you can sense that they're different. I don't know if anyone here has had the opportunity to meet such great people. I personally have, and it's a fascinating thing. But you can see something about them that just makes them stand out. They're just a certain, it's not a physical sensation, it's not something that you see with your eyes, but it's a sense that you can sense about these people. There's a certain greatness that they simply exude. I remember when I saw Rav Yashiv, I had the opportunity to go to a shir of his once, and just the minute he walked in the room, you can just see it. You could just sense there was this greatness about him. And that, Rav Chaim Friedlander says, is what Ramchal is talking about over here, that the neshama is able to act on the body, even. That the body is able to be elevated to an extent, even here in this world, where other people can even sense the greatness and the strength of the neshama that's kind of shining forth. And that's a very powerful thing, and we don't see it often. But if you have the opportunity to see these great people, you can see it. It's recognizable. So that seems to be what he's discussing over here, and that is how Chaim Friedlander explains this. Okay, good? All right, yes?
Is what you're describing also related to the concept of charisma?
Is it related to charisma? I think charisma can come from many sources, not necessarily this, but can this create a certain charisma? Yeah, I'm sure it can. Some of the greatest sages were terrible public speakers. They were not charismatic in that sense at all. But at the same time, when they had conversations with people listened. So, I don't know if you it wouldn't be charisma in the classical sense. Let's put it that way. Okay. All right, are we good? Moving on? Okay. All right, so Ramchal continues and says, V'hinei, kifi ma'aseh ha'tovim she'osav ha'ilechus. Based on the deeds, the good deeds that the neshama and the body together will do as it goes through life, it should spread, it should expand, and it should shine, as we've explained. And if that would happen, then the body would be purified and elevated. However, because of the decree that we explained earlier, it's not possible for that to happen. Only when it gets to the world of the neshamas. So essentially, what should happen is that a person should grow and expand through their spirituality to the point that they eclipse the level of Adam. Remember, Adam started at this magnificently high level for nothing other than the fact that he had a neshama. And really, we should all be that way. We should all be angelic in that sense. Except for the fact that Hashem decreed because of the sin that the body was going to then conceal the neshama and not allow it to shine through. That's why we don't sense our neshamas, we don't see other people's neshamas, we don't live that kind of life because of this concealment. But once the neshama goes to the world of souls, at that point it's able to shine. At that point it's able to expand and show off its full glory from the good things that it has done in this world. Okay. Achein. However, Bishuva beguf achar hatchia, when the neshama goes back into the body after the resurrection, loy tisma'et v'loy tisalein. At that point, it will no longer be diminished, and it will no longer be hidden. Elatikones b'chol zahareh b'chol keicha. It will come into the body full force, with full strength. And then immediately it will purify and elevate and transform the body to a tremendously high level. Immediately. So when we think of the resurrection, we have to stop picturing a bunch of zombies. We have to stop picturing, skeletons slowly getting up out of the grave and then, slowly growing back into people, and we think we look like ourselves. Not at all. It's not going to look anything like that. What's going to happen is going to be that the neshama is going to come back into the body. The body will no longer conceal it and hide it, and what you're going to have is a bunch of Adam Arishans walking around. Totally different. Completely different experience. We're not at all talking about the experience that we think of, the resurrection, where all the dead people are going to come back the way they were. That's not what's going to happen. We're going to come back, and the neshama is going to be infused back into the body, and it's going to be an entirely different life, an entirely different body. It's going to be like Adam Arishan, every one of us, assuming we merit to be resurrected. So let's get on that. But we're talking about tremendously different than what we see today, like nothing we've ever seen. Everyone's going to be like Adam Arishan. Stephen, you seem perplexed. You're pondering. Okay, all right. One person's thinking. That's good. At least he says he is, anyway. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, we're talking. We have to wipe that picture out of our heads of just everybody getting up. It doesn't work that way. We're talking about Adam Arishan. That's what everyone's going to be. It's very powerful. Okay.
Yeah, we said that each person's going to be clear like what level they attain.
Yes.
I'm mixing that with there's like a different shine based on the purity level.
We'll get there. The next paragraph, we're going to talk about that. Okay. So now he continues and says, the person will not need to be raised little by little, to grow little by little, the way we need to do now for children. Immediately, once the neshama is infused into the body, it will immediately shine within it. And it will immediately grant it this great level of perfection. So, people want to know, how was Adam created, fully grown, a baby? There was no such thing. It was all one. Because the moment that even a person was born at that time, before the sin, assuming Cain was born before the sin, at that moment, he was already great, already huge. There was no process of growing, of raising, none of that existed. Because the neshama was so powerful, it didn't need any of that. So, as soon as a person was born or created, they would be already fully developed in this spiritual sense. And because of that, in the physical sense as well. Now, the inference from this is very interesting. And this, again, Rav Chaim Friedlander brings this out. He mentions this in he has two commentaries on the Derech Hashem. So most of them come from the bigger one. This is actually from the smaller one. But he says that it seems from here that the reason the babies today are the way they are, that they need to be raised and grown and all of that, is because the neshama also is going through that same process. He's saying that it sounds from here that the neshama has to grow and develop, and that's why the body has to grow and develop. Which is why when the body isn't stifling the neshama, that's not necessary. And the neshama is already fully grown and fully developed, so the body will also be. But it sounds like, he says, it sounds like from here that today, it's not that way. Today, when the neshama is put into man, into a baby, it's not developed fully, and the growth that a person goes through is reflective of the growth that the neshama is going through as well. Which is an interesting thing.
Since the neshama is contained, then the body is left to its own necessity of growth. In other words, the reason why the growth isn't over, shining itself is because the neshama has been so to speak encapsulated.
Mm-hmm.
So once it's encapsulated, so now you're leaving the body to its own devices. And the goof itself wouldn't grow. That doesn't mean that the neshama is growing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure. I have this problem. I'm not sure where he sees it, but he's saying that the wording of the Ramchal here implies that the neshama, because of the state that it will be in then, will be fully developed. That's why it doesn't need, the body won't need growing and developing, as opposed to the way children are. He says now children need developing. So he's saying that wording sounds like the development is through the neshama, not just without the neshama, so to speak. But I agree. I think it could be read either way, personally.
This is the definition, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why do you need the goof at all?
Why do you need the goof at all?
It's just going to be the div. You have the shine of the neshama is the shine, and what's the purpose of the body at that point? Are there going to be mitzvahs? Are there going to be things that need to be completed or rectified?
Okay, so let's see the next paragraph and we'll see.
Another reason why I've always said that the body is necessary because the neshama has a need to give also.
Yeah, we'll get it. Let's see the next paragraph. The amnam. However, loy yimna zeh, this is not going to preclude sheyu legufla neshama yachad iluyim acher iluyim. The idea of the body and soul together growing higher and higher. Aval inyanhu, rather, what happens is shemiyad b'vay haneshama b'guf, immediately as the neshama comes into the body, yiyah ha'adam ahu yakar v'nale. That person will be great and very, very high and lofty immediately at that moment. V'gufa yikabel miyad zikuch rishon, and the body will then attain its initial purification and elevation. And it will grow greater than and through that which it had done throughout its lifetime. Meaning, to the extent that we grew in our lifetimes, the extent that our neshamas were accumulating power and strength and growth, that's how much the neshama is going to be in actuality once the body is resurrected. So, however much we accomplished, that's how much we're going to grow. And the yiyah hazika chahu kifi kol ma'asim ha'tovim she'asa kvar. And that level of purification and elevation will be based on the actions that we did, the things that we did during our lifetimes. That's going to determine just how much growth we accomplish at that initial reinfusion of the neshama into the body. That's how much it's going to be, right then. And then and then you'll be put on the level that is appropriate for him, to be amongst those who merit to benefit from the perfection that they themselves have achieved. V'achar kach, and after that, yis'alu shneihem iluyim achar iluyim. They will continue to grow higher and higher, kifim asheroi lemishu madregahi, based on the one who is befitting for such a level. So what does this mean? So as we've said earlier, there is a degree, let me just read this here. I think it says it here on the bottom. Hold on. Okay, so let me read this to you, how he writes it over here, based on Das Tvuras. Even in Olam Haba, after Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection, and the 7th millennium, the person will constantly become elevated and closer to Hashem. But his particular growth level will always be in relationship to the level established at the time of his resurrection. The soul purifies the body, which becomes elevated. But by the very act of elevating the body, the soul has fulfilled its divine purpose, that of being a giver. And it therefore receives a higher level of purification than it had previously had. At this higher level, the soul can add a further purification to the body, which now is at a newly elevated level. This develops a continually spiraling effect upwards by giving the body a new spiritual dimension of growth. The soul has again fulfilled its purpose and thus receives a higher level of perfection, and this continues forever. The Gra writes that the delights of Olam Haba will be constantly increasing from the added understanding of Hashem and His Torah. So the idea here is that a person is able to do something